Sometime between 10:30 a.m. and 11:30 p.m. on March 8th of 2002, residents in the area of 1700 West Gramercy Avenue in Anaheim, California, heard what sounded like a gunshot, followed by the screeching of car tires. Responding officers found the body of a man, later identified as Scott Miller, laying face down in a pool of blood in an alley just north of 1700 Gramercy. Miller, he died from a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. Police investigation into Miller's death revealed that he was the original founding member of the Southern California White Supremacist criminal street gang known as Public Enemy number 1, also P.E.N.1. The gang, which is very active in the California state prison system and the streets, started in the late 1980s, and it's a subordinate gang to the White Supremacist gang called the Aryan Brotherhood. Today, we'll address exactly what went down that night, along with several other crazy situations that followed as we address Public Enemy number 1, also known as P.E.N.1. And trust, this gang is by far one of the craziest you're gonna hear about. Yeah. All right. Welcome to Cali's Most Dangerous. Let's get into it.
Also known as the P.E.N.1 Death Squad, law enforcement intelligence says the gang is increasing recruitment efforts in the ranks of white supremacist skinheads. And as we see in this Fox Undercover report, the P.E.N.1 is making a push for power in prisons, but also out on the streets.
This dog's owner belongs to a group so taken with violence.
His name's Hitman Tank.
He jokes, even his pit bull carries a sawed-off shotgun.
Scott Miller, also known as Scottish, was a founding member of the Orange County-based white supremacist street gang known as Public Enemy number 1, which formed in the mid-1980s. According to the prosecution's gang expert, despite Miller's original gangster status in the P.E.N.1, by 2000, he was becoming increasingly disliked by other P.E.N.1 gang members and was viewed by some as being out of control. Although Miller continued to be a member in good standing, notwithstanding the internal dissension, all that changed when Miller decided to participate in a local Fox 11 News television segment about P.E.N.1 and his criminal activities. The show was broadcasted on February 20th of 2001, just a few days before another founding member of the gang, Donald Maza, also known as Popeye, was to stand trial for P.E.N.1 gang-related criminal charges.
This remote area near Big Bear.
Myself, I have over 300 guns.
The tattooed hands of Tank's owner ready a .38 revolver. Quickly use it to demonstrate his murderous mettle. He is a shot caller in a gang called Public Enemy number 1. Mostly known as P.E.N.1, sometimes referred to as PDS, short for the P.E.N.1 Death Squad.
Despite Fox's attempt to conceal Miller's identity, it was obvious to anyone that knew him that it was Miller featured on the program. Apparently, Fox, they were unable to conceal all of his visible tattoos, and they allowed him to be interviewed with his beloved pet pit bull. As to be expected, Miller's interview did not go over well with other P.E.N.1 gang members. According to another member of the gang, Daryl Mason, Miller's participation in the television segment put him in a hat, or canceled his good standing in the gang. In fact, Mason testified that other members of the gang put a green light on Miller, which meant that he was to be targeted for an act of violence. Approximately 1 month before his death, there was a rumor circulating that Miller would be hit for participating in the Fox television program, and that P.E.N.1 gang members John Gross and Jesse Wyman might have been designated to carry out the killing. However, Gross and Wyman, they were incarcerated at the time. But still, P.E.N.1 had more than a few members more than willing to earn stripes for the gang, like Billy Joe Johnson, Jacob Rump, and Michael Lamb.
I'll do whatever I have to do to make the money, to get my coin, and I live by the code of silence.
He says he gets the dope from P.E.N.1 buddies.
Partners make it.
For a while, they were making it here.
Manufacturing, speed.
On the evening of March 8th of 2002, a little over a year after the news segment about P.E.N.1, Johnson's cousin hosted a party at 1700 West Gramercy Avenue in Anaheim, California. Several members and associates of P.E.N.1 attended the party, including Miller, Jacob Rump, Michael Lamb, and Billy Joe Johnson, who had recently transitioned to P.E.N.1 after falling out with the Nazi lowriders. A white supremacist gang also did a video on. If you guys haven't heard about them, you guys definitely tap in after this. Anyways, although Johnson didn't know Miller for decades, he had not seen Miller since the news broadcast had aired. According to testimony of a mutual friend who also attended the party, Miller and Johnson were laughing together and joked about keeping his guard up. At around 10:30 p.m. on the night of the party, Miller's now ex-girlfriend received a voicemail from him, and he sounded concerned. Also in the background, she heard voices, one of which she recognized as Johnson's. Another woman who had also previously dated Miller saw him when she first arrived at the party at around 10 p.m., but she left the party shortly after to buy drugs, and by the time she returned at about 11 p.m., Miller, he was nowhere to be found. Earlier that day, P.E.N.1 member Michael Lamb had called Christina Hughes at her Anaheim apartment. He was looking for Tanya Hidden, a P.E.N.1 associate who was staying there. Hughes told Lamb that Hidden was not at the apartment. He responded, "It's important. Have her call me when she gets home." Hughes gave Hidden a message when Hidden arrived at the apartment in the early morning, but also told Hidden that she did not want any visitors coming to her place. Shortly after 10:30 p.m., however, Hughes walked downstairs from the upper level of the two-story apartment and saw Hidden with Lamb and P.E.N.1 member Jacob Rump on the first floor. Both men had recently been released from prison. When Hughes demanded that they go, Hidden assured her that the group was leaving, and Hughes went back upstairs. A few minutes later, Hughes heard a single gunshot fired just outside the alley. A neighbor whose home faced the alley also heard a gunshot, followed by the sound of screeching tires. Sometime between 11:30 and 11:35, Hughes and a friend went into the alley to investigate. That's where she saw the dead body of a man she did not recognize and a large amount of blood. Police responded to the scene about 20 to 25 minutes after the shooting and found Miller's body face down in the alley with blood coming from the head area. There was a bloody baseball cap and soda can underneath Miller's head, which suggested that he had been surprised by the gunshot and dropped the items when he was shot. The day after the shooting, Johnson called Miller's former girlfriend, asking if he had heard what had happened. He told her, "Scott, he's no longer with us," and something to the effect that if she needed anything, he would be there for her. That same day, Johnson spoke with his friend and fellow gang member, Donald McLachlan, about his involvement in Miller's death. Johnson told McLachlan that he drove with Miller from the party in Costa Mesa to Anaheim, telling Miller that they were going to get drugs. He also indicated that he was walking next to Miller in an alley before he was killed. When Miller heard footsteps approaching from behind, he asked Johnson, "Are those P.E.N.1 guys?" He was then introduced to Lamb and Rump. According to Johnson, Miller seemed resigned to the idea that something was going to happen to him. Johnson identified Lamb as a shooter. He also told McLachlan that he was angry and upset about the way the killing was handled, and he confronted Lamb about it. Describing Miller as a good friend, Johnson thought Miller should have been executed by a shot to the face and not to the back of the head. As Johnson envisioned this scenario, Miller should have been told to his face, "Hey, you had a good run. You ran afoul of all the rules, and it's time to go." Johnson explained that Miller had to be killed because of the news interview and his actions in the neighborhood. But Miller's death, it definitely wasn't the end of this deadly situation. Because on an afternoon of March 11th of 2002, Anaheim police officer Michael Helmick, then assigned to an undercover auto theft detail, responded to a report of a stolen parked car in an alley right behind 318 South Melrose Street in Anaheim, California. He was assisted by Anaheim police officer Brian Santee, who was an observer in an Anaheim Police Department helicopter piloted by another Anaheim police officer. Helmick, who was not in uniform, arrived at the scene in an unmarked police car. He quickly determined that the car, a Ford Taurus, had been in fact reported stolen, and he requested assistance of a backup officer, Anaheim Police Detective Danny Allen. While Helmick waited for Allen to arrive, he saw Rump drive the Taurus out of the alley and into a South Melrose Street where he parked in front of an apartment complex. Helmick followed the car and parked about 5 car lengths behind Rump. Rump then looked back and stared at Helmick through a side view mirror. After that, Lamb ran out of the apartment complex and got into the stolen Taurus. He was carrying a black jacket. Santee reported that Lamb was one of the 2 individuals with shaved heads who'd been milling around in the alley before Helmick arrived. After Lamb got into the car, Rump made an abrupt U-turn and drove towards Helmick on South Melrose Street. Helmick tried to block the Taurus as it approached, but Rump drove over a curve to avoid stopping and then accelerated on the southbound lane of South Melrose Street. Helmick in a helicopter pursued the Taurus. Allen, who was also in plain clothes and driving in an unmarked car, joined the pursuit. He tried using his car to block the tourists, but Rump, once again, swerved around the car and continued on to Center Street. Helmick and Allen temporarily lost sight of the tourists when it turned into Center Street. However, Senti maintained eye contact as a helicopter dipped to an altitude of 400 feet. Senti then saw Rump and Lamb jump from the still-moving tourists and run into a nearby apartment complex. He relayed this information to Helmick and Allen as the now driverless tourists collided with the parked car. Following Senti's direction, Helmick got out of the car and pursued Rump and Lamb on foot. As he entered the apartment complex, Helmick noticed a black jacket on the ground that looked like the jacket Lamb had been carrying. Allen parked his car, put on a yellow police raid jacket, and entered the apartment complex to join Helmick. Helmick and Allen, they had their guns drawn, and their radios turned up to maximum volume to overcome the noise from the helicopter. They came in contact with the maintenance worker who had told them that they had seen a man run by less than a minute before the officers arrived. Senti, he watched from the helicopter as Lamp and Rump appeared on the second-story balcony, and he relayed the position to Helmick and Allen. The officers, who had their guns drawn, they were in the process of clearing the stairway when Lamp stood up on the balcony, reached over the railing, and fired a shot at Helmick from a distance of about 10 feet. When Helmick and Allen fled for cover, Lamp pointed the gun at the top of the stairs, and then, while sitting in the crouch position, he began fiddling with the gun. Helmick then yelled, "Police officers! Police officers!" several times. They told Lamb that he was surrounded, and they directed him to drop the gun and surrender. Approximately a minute later, Lamb leaned over the balcony and threw the gun, now wrapped in the cloth, down to a planter below. He walked down the stairs and was then taken into custody. As additional officers arrived at the scene, they ordered Rump to surrender himself. Several minutes later, Rump, who was now limping, came downstairs and was also taken into custody. The gun Lamb dropped. It turned out to be a Browning 9mm single-action semi-automatic handgun. A white bandana had been tied around the gun's handle. The hammer was cocked back in a firing position and the safety was off. However, a spent cartridge casing jammed the firing mechanism. The magazine was loaded with 10 rounds of live ammunition, including 6 hollow-point Winchester bullets. A forensic specialist later determined that the expended shell casings found at the scene of the March 8th Miller homicide had been fired by the same Browning gun Lamb possessed and fired on March 11th. After the arrest, Lamb and One were placed in adjoining cells. They shouted back and forth at each other, and their statements were recorded. The gist of the conversations was that they did not know the 2 cars that tried to stop them were unmarked police cars, and that Rump was worried that he had hit someone. Rump admitted running a stop sign, but Lamb told him not to worry. He said a public defender can fucking beat this case. Throughout the conversation, Lamb and Rump called each other homie and comrade. When Rump was interviewed by investigators, he initially said that he had permission to drive the tourists, but later claimed that the car was a rental. He had also admitted recently to injecting meth and told the interviewing officer that he had been up a while. Rump told the officer that some dude in a white car had tried to hit him. Rump claimed to be living in the streets at the time, and he told the officers that he should just be sent back to prison for a parole violation. He would not answer any P.E.N.1 questions, however. When the sergeant tried to interview Lamb first yelled, "Hold on, I gotta tell him. I don't got nothing to say." When the officer told him that he was gonna be held for attempted murder, Lamb then told the officer that he did not know he was shooting at the officer and he was afraid for his life. The police investigation. In March of 2002, Robin Freewall lives in an apartment complex at 318 South Melrose with her daughter Summer and 10-year-old son Michael. Michael told investigators that Rump and Lamb would occasionally stay at their apartment, but did not have any clothes stored there. He remembered that they were together most of the time. Michael also said that he had seen Rump playing around with the white bandana, but he did not recall them handling any guns. He told the detectives that Rump and Lamb had left Freewall's apartment at around 8:30 p.m. on March 8th and did not return that night. The distance between Freewall's apartment and the scene of Miller's murder is approximately 3.2 miles. During a search of Freewall's apartment, officers seized a box containing papers with swastikas and white power written on them, and a piece of tape with the name Jake on it. On March 11th, detectives videotaped 2 interviews with Freewall. She told them that Rump and Lamb were at her residence on March 11th from approximately 7 p.m. until around 9:30 or 10 p.m. when she went to bed. They were not at her home at 11 a.m. when she woke up. So in gist, they thought they were in the clear. But in November of 2002, Daryl Mason, a former member of P.E.N.1 and frequent guest of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, set up a meeting between himself and law enforcement officials. He told police officers that Lamb had stood outside his cell door and quietly told him how he waxed Scottish and that he had stripes coming for that. When Mason asked Lamb how he had done the crime, Lamb said he had shot Miller in the back of the head. Mason said that Lamb seemed serious and looked to be asking for, he's quoted saying, a little bit of a pat on the back or something like that. Shortly after the shooting, Mason was placed in a secure housing unit. At trial, he testified that he had been jumped into the P.E.N.1 gang in the early 1990s while he was serving a sentence in the Orange County Jail. He was a member in good standing until 2002, when Donald Meza, also known as Popeye, who was standing trial at the time, wanted to stop recruiting new members. When Mason refused to follow his order, the gang's leadership put him in a hat, which means that he was targeted for violence. Mason knew of Miller and considered him one of the gang's founding members. He also knew that Miller was in a hat because of the Fox Television News interview. In the end, due to witness testimonies, ballistics evidence, and testimonies from gang experts, the jury returned with a verdict of life in prison for Rump and death for Johnston and Lamb. Yeah, insane. And if you think this situation was heavy, you definitely gotta stick around for the rest of P.E.N.1's story. First, let's get into who these guys are. Who are the public enemy number one?
I usually have it turned on.
These P.E.N.1 often monitor police activity on a scanner. And according to law enforcement intelligence obtained by Fox 11 News, P.E.N.1 are actively recruiting new members to protect their interests and strengthen their position among other white criminal elements.
Public enemy number one, also known as the P.E.N.1 Death Squad, is an unusual hybrid of a racist skinhead gang, street gang, and prison gang, formed in Long Beach, California. Look, they must have been formed in Naples, Seal Beach, or Signal Hill or something like that. Definitely not the Long Beach I know. Anyways, they're now based in Orange County, California, and they're active in the Inland Empire. Since the early 2000s, the group has grown a lot, particularly in California where it originated, and it's also spread to nearby states. P.E.N.1's increasing strength stems to a large degree from its ability to position itself as a white-power criminal organization capable of operating in both the streets and in the prison yards as foot soldiers for older and more established white supremacist gangs, such as the Aryan Brotherhood. Also, being heavily involved in the drug trade, P.E.N.1 members have a long history of violence. Yeah, P.E.N.1 members are known for a lot. Right behind Disneyland is a racist white boy with a Glock. And trust, he's probably about to let off some shots. In addition to drug-related criminal activity, P.E.N.1 members have committed a number of violent crimes, including assault, murder, and attempted murder.
These groups are going to start popping up everywhere, and they are extremely violent.
He says P.E.N.1 sees themselves as Viking warriors, true to pagan Nordic gods, a die-on-your-shield philosophy, and no remorse. It fits well with a group that has evolved from punk rockers to racist skinheads to a gang of thugs moving into organized crime.
In this business, it's guns, speed, violence, and sex. That's what it's all about.
The group's mercenary and criminal nature, coupled with the white supremacist ideology and a subculture of violence, makes it a triple threat, both to law enforcement and to the public at large. And don't think you can't fall victim to these guys, because even people far removed from the worlds of narcotics and gangs may fall victim to the P.E.N.1 through white-collar crimes ranging from fraud to counterfeiting to identity theft. P.E.N.1 members were given a nickname neo-Nazis due to their heavy drug usage and racist ideology. Because of their involvement with illegal drugs, both as users and sellers, many of their encounters with law enforcement on the streets revolve around drugs. On March 16, 2002, for example, law enforcement officials from various agencies arrested 23 suspected members and leaders and associates of P.E.N.1 who were allegedly involved in drug sales, identity theft, and other crimes as well. All the suspects, they had lengthy criminal records, and more than half of those arrested were women. Officials confiscated 12 weapons and recovered small amounts of heroin and meth from the gang. Like the Aryan Brotherhood and the Nazi lowriders, P.E.N.1 members often have working relationships with Hispanic street gangs and non-white prison street gangs, such as the Mexican Mafia, due to their shared interests in criminal activity, particularly the drug trade. Even though P.E.N.1 sells meth and to a lesser extent other drugs, it's not involved in the production of drugs. P.E.N.1 members get most of their drugs from illegal manufacturers. P.E.N.1 members, they also use drugs as a means to entice and recruit other members into the organization.
They are under directives when they're paroled to start building a cell of members from their area. This particular group has a very great potential for violence and are pretty much unpredictable when that violence may occur.
They have sometimes allegedly supplied addicts with drugs, eventually coercing them through force and intimidation to commit crimes for the gang. P.E.N.1 members, they're also active in the inbringing of drugs into the prison systems. In August of 2004, drugs were allegedly introduced into the Southern California prison system by P.E.N.1 members through dirty diapers brought into the facility by a member of an outside landscaping crew. Yeah, that's the thing. P.E.N.1 members have always managed ways to organize around drug trade in both in and out of prison. For example, law enforcement officials recently discovered that there were a few sober living homes or halfway homes in Orange County that had a reputation for being P.E.N.1 friendly. Some employees at a home allegedly turn a blind eye, permit, or in some cases, may even be involved with the sale of drugs and other criminal activity. P.E.N.1 members, they've reportedly been able to take advantage of the fact that there's little licensing or regulation to these homes by government agencies, making them potentially easier targets for criminal activity. Violent crimes. In addition to drug-related criminal activity, P.E.N.1 members have committed a number of violent crimes, including assault, murder, and attempted murders. One example of this violence played out with Chad Russell Studebaker, an unfortunate victim, Francisco Espinosa. Chad Russell Studebaker was an active member of Public Enemy #1. One Sunday, Francisco Espinosa, an immigrant from Nicaragua, drove his wife and two very young daughters in their car displaying the Nicaragua flag. Suddenly, Studebaker emerged out of the side of a parking lot into the path of Espinosa's car, blocking it and forcing Espinosa to swerve quickly into the fast lane of southbound traffic to avoid hitting Studebaker. Espinosa, he quickly regained control of his car and proceeded to pass the offending driver, shrugging his shoulders and lifting his palms up as to inquire what's going on. He then turned at an upcoming intersection as he originally planned. Studebaker, he sped up and went around Espinosa and cut him off as he entered the side street. Espinosa was then forced to stop because Studebaker's car completely blocked his own. He could see Studebaker reaching down between the seats before emerging from his car and approaching Espinosa. Fearing that his wife and daughters were in danger, Espinosa got out of the car and attempted to lead Studebaker away. But still, as he approached Espinosa, Studebaker had one hand behind his thigh. Suddenly, he lunged forward at Espinosa, slashing the man's throat with the knife and severing the Star David chain he was wearing at the time. Studebaker, he then reached down, grabbed the Star David, and fled back to his car. Espinosa yelled to have his wife call the police and ran after Studebaker, hoping to restrain him. As Studebaker climbed to his car, Espinosa tried pulling him out, but he broke off his efforts when Studebaker turned again and started slashing him with the knife. Espinosa noticed that Studebaker's shoes had red laces. This fashion statement became relevant because the gang expert testified that P.E.N.1 gang members often wear red shoelaces as a distinguishing marker. Although getting dizzy from the loss of blood, Espinosa returned to his car and attempted to follow Studebaker. But Studebaker had already turned around at the end of the cul-de-sac and was now driving directly at Espinosa's car. Studebaker then crashed his car into Espinosa's vehicle, disabling it. But the collision also affected Studebaker's car. His steering wheel became unresponsive and he had to drive in reverse. When his car became fully dysfunctional, Studebaker abandoned it and fled on foot. Espinosa, he was bleeding extensively from his throat and he needed immediate treatment as the gas was potentially fatal. The wound will require extensive suturing and left a conspicuous scar and residential pain that Espinosa, he still suffered from at the time of the trial. Later that evening, Studebaker visited a friend of his in Buena Park, leaving with the friend's mother's car. When a friend discovered that he had left with the car, she phoned him and demanded that he return it. But he refused, keeping it for several weeks before abandoning it in the Lake Elsinore area near the home of a fellow P.E.N.1 member. The authorities located Studebaker in that home and they arrested him. Also learning that he was en route to Mexico to avoid prosecution for the assault of Espinosa. At trial, Studebaker testified that Espinosa was one who initiated the incident by cutting him off. Studebaker became enraged because of this and only responded in this manner because of Espinosa's rudeness. He maintained that he never swung a knife until Espinosa attacked him with his own car, and he did so at the time to protect himself. He also denied stealing his friend's car, saying instead she had given him permission to take it. But still, in the end, he was later convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 21 years to life in prison. A more gruesome incident occurred in April 2004, when a group of P.E.N.1 members attacked a 26-year-old Laguna Niguel resident because they thought he had stolen 12 grand from a stripper and P.E.N.1 associate. Although they apparently only attended the torture room to extract a confession and the location of their money, their brutal attack with blows from a claw hammer to a skull eventually killed the victim. Police arrested 9 members and associates of P.E.N.1 on various charges in connection with the slaying, including the previous mentioned Billy Joe Johnson of Huntington Beach and Jason Carr of Costa Mesa.
Even a younger breed of P.E.N.1 like 18-year-old Brian O'Leary are leaving a trail of violence. P.E.N.1 tattooed on his neck, Death Squad on his arms, and more P.E.N.1 carved on his stomach. O'Leary paired up with young skinhead Anthony Bailey. They attacked an ex-white supremacist in Huntington Beach.
One guy took a knife, stabbed him twice. Another guy took a baseball bat, hit him upside the head.
Officer Gary Faust says O'Leary got 15 years in prison, Bailey 12 years behind bars.
Authorities believe P.E.N.1 members may have also been behind other unsolved murders that involved punishing members believed to have betrayed the gang's trust. Also, in June of 2002, Lake Elsinore police discovered the severely beaten body of an 18-year-old girl stuffed into a 55-gallon drum in an open field. The men charged with her murder, Jeffrey Botner and Glenn Joseph Jones, were reportedly P.E.N.1 members who allegedly believed the victim had been talking to law enforcement. P.E.N.1 members, they've also committed a number of violent acts in prison as well. Like other white supremacist prison gangs, P.E.N.1 follows certain codes of behavior. Other criminal activity. In recent years, Public Enemy number 1 members, like those of other racist prison gangs, have become increasingly involved in white-collar crime, including computer fraud, credit card fraud, counterfeiting, and identity theft. P.E.N.1 members sometimes solicit friends, relatives, and associates who have access to personal records to steal private data from institutions where they work, including banks, mortgage businesses, dental offices, hospitals, or even the Department of Motor Vehicles. P.E.N.1 members will also engage in stealing personal data via auto burglary, mail theft, purse snatching, and trash diving. They can provide this data to people who use it to create false identities. Documents that have been replicated include driver's license, bank statements, social security cards, notarized documents, duplicate checks, and even W-2 forms, as well as counterfeit money. In one case, P.E.N.1 member Brian Mitchell, also known as Bullet, was arrested for making counterfeit $50 bills by bleaching lower denomination currency and running a paper through a color printer. He was later convicted of having equipment for the purpose of counterfeiting money for the benefit of financing the prison accounts of the P.E.N.1 members. Identity theft and stolen information have also been used by P.E.N.1 members for their own personal pleasure. There have been reports of P.E.N.1 members using stolen credit cards to check into hotels and hold parties. Law enforcement was only alerted when security risks emerged at the hotel, such as P.E.N.1 guests refusing to leave at the hotel's checkout time or stolen credit cards setting off an alert. In addition to all that, P.E.N.1 members are known to target law enforcement officers. As the criminal investigation into a possible Public Enemy number 1 hit list of officers and prosecutors in Southern California suggests, P.E.N.1 members can pose officer safety threats to law enforcement. P.E.N.1 members caught in criminal activity have a history of fleeing on foot and in their vehicles, and have displayed aggressive and violent resistance to arrest by law enforcement. Like members of other drug-using criminal street gangs, P.E.N.1 members can be unstable, irrational, and unpredictable. In addition, many of its members have become habitual offenders and may become combative to prevent rearrest and lengthy incarceration under the 3 strikes law in California. According to law enforcement sources, P.E.N.1 members have also attempted to use a range of weapons against officers, including handguns, sawed-off shotguns, revolvers, semi-automatics, and rifles. In one case, a vehicle was used as the weapon. On May 13th of 2003, a P.E.N.1 member wanted for a parole violation fled on foot when a California Highway Patrol officer attempted to stop his vehicle. The officer pursued the gang member, who allegedly doubled back to his vehicle, placed the car in reverse, and then struck the officer, knocking him on the ground. The suspect's car also injured the officer's canine. The suspect was arrested 5 days later at a local park. In February of 2001, during a televised interview, P.E.N.1 member Scottis Miller boasted that P.E.N.1 members listen to police scanners, which allows them to eventually recognize officers by their voices, radio signs, and work shifts. He also bragged about owning over 300 guns. California records revealed that Miller had no firearms registered to him. Since many P.E.N.1 members have felony records, they must purchase weapons illegally on the streets or steal them during residential burglaries. That's not all though. The group has also raised its profile in the California prison system, where incarcerated members attempt to gain more recruits and influence. P.E.N.1's increasing strength stems from a large degree from its ability to position itself as a white-power criminal organization capable of operating both on the streets and in the prison yards as foot soldiers for more established white supremacist prison gangs, such as the Aryan Brotherhood.
It started decades ago with members of the Aryan Brotherhood, or AB, the gang of gangs among white supremacists, led by convicted killer John Stinson. The AB are locked away in special units at maximum security prisons like this one at Pelican Bay. This white supremacist ex-convict explains it simply.
I don't know if too many ABs walk in the yard because ABs are all locked down and they don't have any physical contact with anybody.
With AB lockdown, that gave rise to the Nazi lowriders, or NLR, another white supremacist gang that started running the prison yards in the 1990s and calling the shots for white Nazi gangs out in the streets.
They're straight killers. The lowriders are killers. They're like a rattlesnake. You walk across their shaded area and they're just liable to strike you without much of a warning at all.
And without much warning at all. In January of 1999, the NLR was snake-bit itself. The Department of Corrections named NLR a prison gang. And its members, like the Aryan Brotherhood, are now locked down in special security cells. And that has opened a prison door for P.E.N.1.
We are getting intelligence that they are stepping up to take the place of the Nazi lowriders from the main line.
Yeah, but unlike the Aryan Brotherhood and the Nazi lowriders, Public Enemy Number 1 is not technically a prison gang, according to California Department of Corrections guidelines. A prison gang is defined as a group that developed in prison and exists for the most part only behind bars, although it may in fact have counterparts on the outside. Prison gang members can automatically be assigned to the Secure Housing Unit, also known as a SHU, and segregated from the rest of the population. A regular inmate can only be sentenced to the SHU if he is a threat to the institution's security or has been proven to be an associate of a prison gang. However, P.E.N.1 members play an important role in California's prison gang structure, thanks in large part to the Aryan Brotherhood. By the late 1970s, California prison officials attempted to limit the growing problem of the Aryan Brotherhood by subjecting it to increasingly closer scrutiny and locking up its members in a SHU. In reaction, the Aryan Brotherhood, they reached out to Nazi lowrider members to serve as the middleman for the Brotherhood's various criminal activities. At the same time, Nazi lowriders filled a vacuum left by the Aryan Brotherhood by attracting more white inmates who had previously turned to the Aryan Brotherhood for protection and did not want to be documented as associates of a prison gang and confined to the SHU. The Nazi lowriders' membership and criminal reputation grew tremendously after the Aryan Brotherhood was isolated in secure housing. However, in 1999, California prison officials officially recognized the Nazi lowriders as a prison gang. As a result, members are now given automatic SHU sentences and segregated from the rest of the prison population. The Nazi lowriders, they now suffer from many of the same limitations that the Aryan Brotherhood did. During this period, an increasing number of Nazi lowrider members dropped out of the gang and some joined P.E.N.1. Most known P.E.N.1 members entering prison are placed initially on the main line or in general population, where they have relative freedom to congregate and associate with other inmates and can more easily conduct criminal business without being monitored as closely as validated prison gang members. Given the limitations placed on their members' movements, the Aryan Brotherhood and Nazi lowriders were forced to forge alliances with smaller groups that could help them maintain their position in the drug trade. The Aryan Brotherhood, in particular, realized P.E.N.'s potential and inducted the group's members into its criminal operations, both in and out of prison. This was not without controversy. Some Nazi lowrider members were resentful about Aryan Brotherhood essentially giving the keys or control to P.E.N. members. In an unsuccessful attempt to be independent of Aryan Brotherhood, fellow Nazi lowrider members broke away from and formed another group. Most Nazi lowrider members, however, maintained their alliance with the Aryan Brotherhood. Nazi lowrider members may work on individual basis with P.E.N., but overall cooperation between the two groups has been limited. History of Public Enemy number 1.
P.E.N., that's how P.E.N. started.
This P.E.N. member, in a police tape obtained by Fox 11 News, remembers the beginning.
When we were kids, and when we started this as kids, we were all punk rockers at Disneyland.
Public Enemy number 1's original membership consisted largely of white, middle-class youths active in the punk music subculture popular in Southern California in the mid-1980s. In fact, the name of the group comes from the 1980s British punk band Rudimentary P.E.N. Music venues offered a variety of alternative music that appealed to both racist and non-racist skinheads, and some featured explicitly white power bands. People came from a wide geographic area, including Long Beach and the Inland Empire, to hear music, drink, meet, network, and form groups. A number of white street gangs emerged from the scene, including among others P.E.N., Los Angeles Death Squad, Norwalk Skins, and the Orange County Skins. P.E.N., they began as a white power gang, but without a single clear purpose or orientation. Almost from the outset, P.E.N. was divided into two camps. One faction emphasized maintaining an ideologically oriented white power organization, while the other faction championed carrying out more criminal activities. Brody Davis, an influential member of P.E.N., allegedly encouraged members to follow a more traditional path of promoting white power and racist skinhead ideologically, and to reject drug use and criminal activity. Initially, the group followed this path, and members distributed leaflets that promoted white supremacy while also engaging in typical skinhead activities like heavy drinking and fighting. However, another P.E.N. member, Donald Reed, also known as Popeye, reportedly used his own influence to steer the group in a different direction. As Davis's leadership position waned, many of the disenfranchised white youth and P.E.N. members turned to drugs. By the late 1980s, P.E.N.'s activities, they resembled those of other criminally active gangs. The drug habits of Popeye and other P.E.N. members drove a shift towards drug trafficking and crime to support the habits. To this day, drug use remains prevalent among P.E.N. members. P.E.N.'s membership, it gradually increased as it expanded geographically from Long Beach to Orange County and expanded its criminal enterprises from drug distribution to also include auto theft, burglary, property crime, witness intimidation, and identity theft. This in turn led to an increased P.E.N. presence in California's prison system. Prison-based P.E.N. members used the prisons as sources of recruitment, and P.E.N. began to grow behind bars as well. With that growth, the group began to distinguish themselves from other white supremacist gangs. This gang uses the numeric symbols 737 to indicate association with the gang. The numbers correspond with the letters P, D, and S on a telephone keypad. The initials stand for P.E.N. Death Squad, another name for the group. Also, members marked themselves with tattoos with different acronyms for the gang. Designs commonly include the words P.E.N., PDS, or the numbers 737. They may also refer to other terms or acronyms for the group, including PEN1, P.E.N. Death Squad, PDS, and PEN9. Another distinctive feature about P.E.N. members is the use of its female associates. With many of the male members of P.E.N. locked up, its female members and associates often become worker bees for the group. Women are given monikers and may even participate in criminal activity. In fact, according to law enforcement, some within P.E.N. viewed it as preferable for female members to carry out certain criminal activities, precisely because they can better hide their affiliation with P.E.N. and blend in more easily with the general population. In contrast with male P.E.N. members, women often have tattoos that are hidden or small in size, and they don't have a specific way of dressing or hairstyle. Women are expected to provide income for the gang, often through manual jobs, and rent apartments for gang members to help them hide from authorities when needed. Some have served as drug carriers, and others have worked at or have applied for jobs that might help the gang, such as bail bonds business or pharmacy, or as non-sworn law enforcement personnel. Key female members of the group can be crucial in facilitating P.E.N.1 activities, especially by acting as links for incarcerated P.E.N.1 members to the outside world by keeping up contacts outside of prison. Women play a key role in helping P.E.N.1 members circumvent restrictions on prisoners' telephone and brain communications in a variety of ways, including facilitating three-way calling between members in prison to third parties, coordinating conference calls between inmates and gang members on the street, receiving collect calls from an inmate, using call forwarding to transfer the call to another individual, and helping inmates communicate with each other using mail dumps. Additionally, a female gang member may conceal the true source of a letter by various means, such as giving it appearance of a legal document sent by an attorney. The women also raise money to place on the inmates' books. Inmates are allowed to access this money to use in prison convenience stores. One P.E.N.1 associate, in a 2001 televised interview, described her caretaking and support role for P.E.N.1 members as being akin to a den mother. Simone Lawrence, another P.E.N.1 associate, was convicted in March of 2006 of committing identity theft for the sake of benefiting P.E.N.1. The status of individual women in P.E.N.1 is typically based on their male partner's position within the organization. For example, the wives of P.E.N.1 key leaders were considered to have the highest status level, which grants them respect, protection, and monetary provisions. Nonetheless, P.E.N.1 does not officially induct women into the organization, nor can women hold leadership positions. Law enforcement authorities have warned that even though the number of arrests of female members is small, women can be just as dangerous and criminally active as the male members. For example, one woman, Monica Whittick, also known as Mouth, was convicted of witness intimidation in association with P.E.N.1. While housed at the Orange County Jail, Whittick wrote a letter to a P.E.N.1 member in another prison facility, requesting an assault against an individual who witnessed her cellmate's murder case. Whittick received a 5-year sentence for the incident. Danger rating for public enemy number 1.
Within 5 hours of his release, Popeye was back in Orange County, seated inside a camper smoking methamphetamine with 2 accomplices and the hit victim, a gang dropout named Billy Ray Austin. According to this felony complaint, Dominic Rizzo, another P.E.N.1 parolee, beat and held Austin as Popeye plunged a knife into him over and over again. Then, Popeye turned to witnesses and said, "Want some too, punk?"
Public enemy number 1 is going to receive a danger rating of a 9.1 out of 10 based off of the gang's long history of violence, murders, and overall brutality when it comes to their operations. Yeah, trust, P.E.N.1 members are more than willing to commit the crime because they don't give a fuck about doing the time. Bars. Nah, look, y'all heard a few stories, and trust, there was a lot more stuff I couldn't even add to YouTube because of how graphic they were. Even though this gang is filled with racists, which I think are the scum of the earth, these motherfuckers have always been one of the most dangerous in both the streets and prison. On top of that, they've always had prominent members and foot soldiers willing to put in work for the gang. What do y'all think though? Would y'all went lower or higher? Y'all let me know in the comments, let's have a conversation about it. Prominent figures. A big name for the gang is gonna be Donald Reed Mazza, also known as Popeye.
Law enforcement sources tell us Popeye Mazza, Dominic Rizzo, and Devlin Gazoo Stringfellow are all P.E.N.1 shot callers who have formed alliances with bosses in the NLR and the AB.
Who was public enemy number 1's shot caller, or leader of the gang, with a violent criminal history, including drug use, with him being a heavy heroin user, and an attempted murder conviction. In April of 1999, according to prosecutors, only 10 hours after being released from prison, Mazza stabbed an associate, William Austin, while Dominic Rizzo, also known as Droopy, the number 2 leader in P.E.N.1 and godfather of Austin's child, held Austin down. Austin, he was a member of the Los Angeles Death Squad, another white supremacist gang, and an active participant in P.E.N.1 and Nazi lowrider activities. Austin was said to have been attacked in his prison order hit because fellow gang members believed he was working with law enforcement as an informant. According to prosecutors, an Aryan Brotherhood member is believed to have overseen the attack. In 2003, Popeye was convicted of attempted murder and is currently serving life in prison at Pelican Bay, a high-security state prison for hardcore gang members. In the summer of 2005, Popeye reportedly earned his Aryan Brotherhood dancing shoes, which means he was inducted into the Aryan Brotherhood ranks. He's now been validated by prison officials as an Aryan Brotherhood associate. Popeye's new membership in the Aryan Brotherhood is likely to boost the P.E.N.1's position and power in the California prison system. Dominic Rizzo, also known as Droopy, was given a life sentence for his attempted murder conviction and is locked up at the West Valley Detention Center in Rancho Cucamonga. Prior to his conviction, Rizzo had been released from the Santa Ana Orange County Jail on July 17th of 2002, paid by a cashier's check, which turned out to be bogus. And like we already mentioned, his use of forged documents is not uncommon for P9 members. In 2003, while being transported, Rizzo slashed the neck of another inmate, a convicted child molester. Rizzo pleaded guilty on July 17th of 2006 to assault with a deadly weapon. His sentence was added to the life term he was already serving for the attempted murder. Prison officials have also since validated Rizzo as an Aryan Brotherhood associate. Another key player for P9 membership is Devlin Springfellow, also known as Gazzo, whose mother married Ruben Papin, a significant Aryan Brotherhood member convicted in 2003 of conspiracy to commit murder. She later allegedly divorced Papin so that her son could spend his parole at home and not violate his terms of probation for affiliating with other gang members. Current state of Public Enemy number 1. On December 14th of 2006, an esteemed term, Operation Stormfront, which reportedly stems from a white supremacist website called Stormfront, nearly 300 officers from more than 24 federal and local enforcement agencies found out across Southern California to execute a series of search and arrest warrants at some 75 different locations, resulting in the arrest of 67 alleged members of Public Enemy number 1. The raids capped a 10-month-long investigation into P9 led by the Anaheim Police Department that had already resulted in a number of P9-related arrests in a week before the mid-December raids. Authorities took action after learning in November of an alleged P9 hit list that contained names of Orange County prosecutors and 5 police officers in several different departments. The suspects, they were arrested on a variety of charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, possession of illegal weapons and narcotics, forgery, probation violations, and identity theft. This definitely was a big hit for P9 as a gang, but still, this gang has continued to operate and thrive. Public Enemy number 1 has had a steady growth since the early 2000s. In 2003, the membership was estimated by law enforcement to be about 200. By 2005, the group had grown to 350 to 400 members. On top of that, as of today, those numbers are to believe to more than triple. P9's growing clout in the prison system and over criminal activities makes it attractive to some white inmates from the general population who seek protection from ethnic and criminal gangs and other prisoners. Some members of white supremacist street gangs joined P9 while incarcerated, then resumed an association with their own street gang after their release. Due to a shared ideology, P9 members can easily blend in with other white racist gangs. This kind of dual membership makes it difficult for law enforcement to access P9's size or attribute crimes to its members. Also, individual P9 members have been documented throughout the country and even abroad, with some states including Texas, Florida, and Alabama. But they appear to be the most concentrated in Orange County, where they're active in almost every city of the county, particularly in Anaheim, Costa Mesa, Garden Grove, Huntington Beach, and South Orange County. They also have a strong presence in the Inland Empire, especially in Riverside and San Bernardino, and exists in smaller numbers in San Diego and Los Angeles counties. P9 is less active in Northern California, where it lacks strength in numbers, but according to law enforcement, it does have a presence in Sacramento, Redding, and Shasta. Also, more recently, the group has begun to recruit in Arizona, like Lake Havasu and Bullhead City. On top of that, the gang has been featured on multiple media outlets. Of course, it's the Fox feature we mentioned earlier, but they also have a Gangland episode as well. That's it for P9. Y'all got any crazy stories about these guys? Any close calls? Did I miss anything? Did I get anything wrong? You guys let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not racist. Y'all stay safe or dangerous out there.